Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today we've got the pleasure of watching Japanhunter from the Asia server playing in the brand new Tier 10 American heavy tank. It is the M5Y. Now, Japanhunter is deciding to use the 105mm gun on this vehicle, something that I would thoroughly recommend, as you all know, if you watch my tank review on the vehicle. That is because the 105mm on this vehicle gives you damage per minute, it gives you accuracy, it gives you gun handling when you're turning the turret, it reduces the weight of your vehicle by about 500-600 kilograms, which is significant when the vehicle only weighs 40 tons. You're going to be getting aim time, everything, even penetration on your standard rounds and your premium rounds as well. The only thing that you're going to be lacking is the alpha damage, as your alpha damage is 360 compared with 440 that you could have if you were using the 120mm on this tank. So Japanhunter immediately is setting this vehicle up in a more aggressive way. A vehicle that needs to be controlling a ridgeline, a vehicle that needs to be putting in continuous rounds to his opponents. Now, I can only guess what kind of equipment Japanhunter is going to be using on this vehicle, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't something along the lines of gun rammer with either vents or vertical stabilizers and a turbo. Probably taking 3 out of 4 of those modules. Personally for me, when I was playing my tank review on this thing, I found that it worked very well with the gun rammer vents and with the turbo, because with the 105mm on this vehicle, its dispersion when you're turning the turret is only 0.06. And so if you can try and improve the movement dispersion with a skill like Smooth Ride on your driver, then it's not even that bad. Although, you know, if you want to be able to snap shots on a ridgeline like we're going to be seeing Japanhunter doing here, then you really can't find any better module than using vertical stabilizers, which is why vert stabs, vents, and a gun rammer is the quintessential, well, the holy trinity of World of Tanks. Although something that I do like to try and contest a little bit. Although that's because I'm probably a player who likes to be aggressive and use a lot more of the mobility than snapping on a ridgeline as cleanly as Japanhunter is going to do here. And what you're going to see is just absolutely excellent marksmanship. It was something that I was really impressed in this replay. It's just how well Japanhunter handles this gun, even though the tank hasn't been around for all of that long. So the M5Y, it's just a master of a ridgeline. 10 degrees of gun depression allows you to work very effectively. It's even got a reasonable amount of elevation at 18 degrees if your opponents manage to get above you. And when you combine that with just great aim time of 2 seconds, and that great gun handling that I talked about, and decent accuracy at 0.35, and this thing can snap. And within the first 3 minutes of this battle, we have seen Japanhunter penetrate what looks like about 12 rounds against the enemy team. Well, I'll make that 13 rounds, but who's counting anyway? Well, it kind of matters when you think just how quickly Japanhunter is ripping apart the enemy tanks, and this is why I do like the look of this vehicle. Unlike the T110E5, which has a huge weak point on top and has marginally better damage per minute than the M5Y, this one does feel as if it can just manage to sit out in front of its opponents. However, you've got to be careful, because whenever you're pointing your gun at your opponents with the M5Y, you are exposing the top. As I eventually got right in my tank review, which was definitely produced very quickly, considering how much of a surprise it was that this tank came out into the game, the gun is locked to the turret. And so that means that when you are using your gun depression, it doesn't actually hide any more of your weak point. Although a lot of the console players immediately jumped up to say, well, you can just raise the gun, right, to improve things a little bit there. And what you can with the Tier 10, the M5Y, you still got to be a little bit careful, because if you do raise the gun too much on this tank, it kind of makes the under part of that turret a little bit more vulnerable to high explosive anti-tank rounds. Not so much on the Tier 10, but definitely on the Tier 9. Be careful if you're raising the gun too much on the Tier 9. And if you see an opponent do that and you have good penetration heat on your vehicle, you can take advantage of it. Alright, so I can clearly see here that Japanhunter is not using a turbo on this tank anymore, which leads me to believe that they are going for gun rammer, vents, and vertical stabilizers, hence why they've just got that god tier gun handling that we saw towards the west. A turbo on this vehicle, however, does significantly up the speed. It is one of those kind of tanks that has a wonderful power to weight ratio, but its top speed is a little bit limited. 40 kilometers an hour, and no one would ever say that is slow in World of Tanks, but pumping that up to 45 kilometers an hour if you want to use the mobility slot with the the sixth field mod, I should say, on this tank, that allows you to kind of breach that more slower medium boundary. It's only about a year ago when the M48 was limited to 45 kilometers an hour. And the fact that we've got heavy tanks now with outrageous armor and these kind of freaky god-tier turrets like we see on the M5Y driving around as quickly as, albeit the slower mediums just a year ago because of maybe a choice of equipment selection or field mods, is just so outrageous. The game definitely feels way faster paced these days than it used to, so I guess you've got to try and do everything that you can to keep up. And talking about doing everything that you can to keep up, Japanhunter has smashed out 7,400 damage this game, only picking up a single kill for that 7,400 damage, and they're just managing to keep their team in this game. They're down by one tank, and they're pretty much neck and neck on hit points, as we can see towards the top of the screen. And that is an absolutely terrifying prospect. Imagine carrying as hard as this. This would be a phenomenal game for anyone to achieve in a tier 10 tank. Probably, if you'd managed to secure more kills, already an ace tanker in the vast majority of tier 10 tanks that you could possibly play. But Japanhunter still has 8 vehicles left on the enemy team to deal with, in addition to having to start to reduce that near 8,000 hit points that they have left as well. And unfortunately, Japanhunter is still firing high explosive anti-tank rounds here. Is this going to be a big misplay that they might need later on against the Object 277 and the E100? Maybe Japanhunter's just thinking about hitting that magical 8,000 damage mark, and that is, a bit of a whiff with one of the 2 remaining high explosive anti-tank rounds in the vehicle now gone. Japanhunter realizes probably that they're still firing gold. Hey, I've been there, I've done that. I remember a time where I was in my gold Type 59 and I was trying to non-role play it, and I was firing gold the whole time during the battle, and then I woke up towards the end. Luckily for me, I only lost credits. Unfortunately for Japanhunter, not only is he going to lose credits, possibly going to lose the flexible rounds to be able to dominate them heavily armored tanks towards the end of the battle here, where APCR rounds would have definitely sufficed, at least for the last few shots against the medium tanks and undoubtedly against the AMX 13105. One thing I'd love to mention about the high explosive anti-tank rounds on this vehicle is that they get an awesome shell velocity of 1,173. And that allows you, even if you are firing gold, to still play as if you're more of a reactionary tank, almost more of a medium within that regard. And one thing that I adore about this vehicle in my short play session, which I'm going to be starting to change next week as I'm going to start grinding for the Yo tanks on my main account, is that the shell velocity on your APCR rounds is 1,472. That gives no opportunity for the Grilla to avoid the shell, and Japanhunter picks up their second kill of this game. Now up to 7,500 damage, and 62 is the little bit of change on top. Alright, so I like what Japanhunter has been doing here for the last couple minutes of the battle. After completely destroying the enemy team on the ridgeline over at the C1 area, instead of just going and grouping up with all of the heavies that we can see to their left, instead decided to take more of an opportunistic role, extending the team's view range and providing a crossfire. I think if Japanhunter hadn't done that, the enemy's medium tanks would have flanked along the west and they would have been able to deal with his entire team. So we heard the Skoda fire one. Will they have another one in the tank? Doesn't look like it. And the great rate of fire on this 105mm gun, as well as the excellent power to weight ratio, allows Japanhunter to pressure the Czechoslovakian medium tank around the corner and be able to finish them off. Luckily for him, the Skoda T50 only had a single shot, and we can hear the tings of intuition there as Japanhunter is trying to decide about what ammunition they want to use against the AMX 13105. But I really don't think they've got a long amount of time to faff right now. They can't really hang about. They've got to try and get behind some of the more heavily armored vehicles that are surrounding Japanhunter's cap circle now. Looking for the E100, probably concerned about the 263, an FV4005 that hasn't even been spotted so far. This is a dangerous situation that just got even more perilous, because Japanhunter now finds themselves in a 1 versus 5 situation, which quickly is reduced to a 1 versus 4. With 1,013 hit points left on Japanhunter's team, and also, as he's the only remaining vehicle, his tank as well, he's got his work cut out for him here. He has to work quickly to try and destroy as many of the vehicles as possible before the FV4005 I should say, who has yet to be seen arrives with that devastating 183mm British tank destroyer gun. Alright, so somebody was in the cap circle, had left, but in this kind of a situation it's tricky to decide about where they could possibly be, but there's the 13105. Japanhunter decides to switch rounds, fires a high explosive round that doesn't penetrate, now with 2 high explosive rounds remaining in Japanhunter's tank, and clutch shots there. A player who's called time to say goodbye, making them live up to their name, but probably not in the way that they wanted to. Shutting them down now with APCR rounds, 9 of them, and 1 high explosive round remaining. Japanhunter is immediately going to jump on the opportunity to fight the 277, shutting them down with a clutch shot towards the lower plate, now changing their 1 versus 5 into a 1 versus 2 scenario. But once again, the E100 looks to be about a 2 or 3 shot, but the FV4005 is on full hit points as they haven't been spotted yet, unless they were blind fired. But that is definitely really kind of scraping the barrel with our terms of hope here. So the E100 expected Japanhunter to come in from the right. Luckily, we can see the E100 is using the lower caliber gun, which means they're going to not lose so many hit points if they get shot. Fortunately as well, the E100 whiffs the shell against Japanhunter's tracks, which allows him to be able to put 3 rounds in quick succession against the E100, and thank goodness those didn't low roll, which now means that Japanhunter has 5 APCR rounds and 1 high explosive round in their vehicle, and there he is, the FV4005. Japanhunter clutch shots around the corner, and YouTube, this is scary stuff. 4 rounds, 360 alpha damage, and 1 round if they can penetrate it with 440 damage, and it is very close indeed if Japanhunter misses a shell that whether they're still going to be able to take down the FV4005. We've seen some low rolls, we've seen some high rolls this game. We're gonna have to see what is going to happen here. I love seeing this as well. We can see Japanhunter's team is getting behind them right now in the in-game chat, and the FV4005 is making their intentions well known by just sitting in the cap circle. And in this location, for defending against the cap circle, you've got a wealth of opportunities, so many different angles that you could press your opponent. However, I guess if you're playing in the M5Y, what you want to do is have the thickest ridge line between you and your opponents, and that is what Japanhunter is clearly trying to achieve here. Japanhunter now working their way up through the ridge line, ready to engage the FV4005 with a high explosive round loaded. This is a big one. Luckily, it goes right in for 420 damage, now meaning that Japanhunter, if they penetrate at least 3 of these 4 shells, is a 50-50 to be able to shut down the enemy tank. 1 round goes in. 3 rounds left. Hopefully no low rolls. Absolute disaster as Japanhunter now misses a shot, meaning they've got 2 rounds left in the vehicle, and they'll have to penetrate both of them and not low roll to guarantee a kill on the FV4005, unless it's going to become something stupid like Japanhunter having to ram the FV4005 as the sirens go off. 2 minutes left on the game. Japanhunter low rolls for 285. I bet you didn't see that coming, boys and girls. OMG. What a heartbreak. I'm sure Japanhunter was thinking about the ramifications of that low roll for the 285 damage, which put a lot of pressure on them from the previous shell not hitting the enemy tank, and they would have had to have high rolled for 404 out of 360 to be able to finish off the FV4005. Oh my lord, what a costly mistake against the ridged line. Although, as we can clearly see when you're being engaged by a tank with a 183mm caliber gun that's very capable of doing 1,150 damage to you even with a standard armor piercing shell, I think Japanhunter had every right to try and snap those shots in against the British brute. So an unbelievably painful heartbreak here for Japanhunter of the Asia server. Unable to put the final shot in against the FV4005, which would have secured the 1 versus 5 scenario and the Kolobanov's medal. Nevertheless, this was just an epic performance. I loved the beginning of the game up on the hill with Japanhunter just showing how scary a turret that has such a small silhouette can be, especially against your lower tiered opponents. And following it up with just lovely plays all around the map, being the medium tank that his team desperately needed in the latter part of the battle. With fantastic aggression, which is how you have to handle those situations with where you're outnumbered, and near pixel perfect plays, got Japanhunter so close to producing one of the greatest carries of the year, at least so far. So an ace tanker here for Japanhunter for his 1023 base experience. However, that is without courageous resistance, which we have to factor in as well, which nearly makes this a 1600 base experience game in a tier 10, which is magnificent. A defender medal for protecting the cap circle, a high caliber for the 11,677 damage dealt, and a top gun that really should have been a Radley Walters medal against that FE405 for those 6 kills. And Japanhunter, I don't know how they managed it, but they actually managed to break even in this game, I guess because they were using a credit booster, spending 159,000 credits on high explosive anti-tank ammunition. But hey, you know, if you're playing the new toy, I guess you don't really care about how much it's going to cost you. So Japanhunter, commiserations to you, but also congratulations on such an epic replay. And in your description, you just wrote OMG. And I would totally agree with you. That was an absolute heartbreak at the end of the battle, but still just an incredible battle fought, showing all of us the capabilities that the M5Y has to offer. So thank you so much for uploading this on the What Replays website to share with the community. I thoroughly enjoyed this replay and hope all of you out there on YouTube felt that I added to it with my commentary. If you did and you loved this replay and you want to see more videos like this, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, however, give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about quickly. Firstly, that there's a new Twitch Drops campaign that's operating for the next few months where you can get tokens for watching my stream, which you can trade in-game for premium days, or if you watch a lot over the next few months and do missions inside the game, you can even get yourself a choice of a TOG2, a Type 64, or an Object 244. But I'd like to clarify that unfortunately so far it is only for the European server, and I would love Wargaming to realize that at least English-speaking community contributors are not just for whatever server they play on, but they have international audiences. So come on, wargaming.com, Wargaming NA and Wargaming Asia server, please help us out so that we can give back to all of our audience and not just some of our audience. But nevertheless, if you're on the European server, you might want to swing by today and get yourself some tokens for the store. Or if maybe that's not your thing, but you love my Tech Tree Showcase, well, it's happening live right now. And this week, as the Centurion Action 10 just became top of the tree, I'm going to be playing all of the British medium tanks, including one or two along that line that maybe I'll be a little bit famous for. So come along right now if you want to know everything there is to know about the British medium tanks and whether it's worth going up towards the Centurion Action 10 this month. So really looking forward to seeing you all live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.